This hangout is live. This is the Oneness Talking Point with Melanie Brockwell. And I'm going to do some fancy screen sharing for our suffering conversation this morning. I don't know, I probably shouldn't laugh. It just makes me laugh. The whole idea. I think there's one thing I should say before we start is there is this point of contention, for want of a better way of describing it, when clients come to me and talk about what's happening for them. I ask the question, is it real? Is it suffering? Is it true? Kind of line of questioning, so that they can take responsibility for and understand what it is for them that's going on. And then, sometimes throughout the session, they'll say, but you have pain and you have grief and you have anger and all that stuff. Why is it different for you? And the answer to that question is, because I accept it as sacred. I accept it as a wave of all that is. I accept it as on purpose, so I can have the full experience and not think that I need to fix it or get rid of it, or I don't need to label it as a catharsis where I'm moving from one side through the muck to the other side. For me, wherever I am is the Holy Land. Everything that's going on is for a reason, is meaningful, is spirit manifest, is all that is having an experience, however, is the divine being. So I just thought that might be useful in the beginning of this broadcast today. And I have a couple of things that I really want to share with you. And the first one is, what do you call it? Not a short, a film trailer, that's what it's called, for a movie that hasn't been released. And I'm actually going to show you inside the window of the Mystery of Mastery, which is where you can go for a free membership to see all of the Oneness Talking Point webinar replays, as well as lots of other stuff that I post in there. So I'm going to click on my little screen share button, and then I'm going to say start screen share. And now you can see inside the Oneness Talking Point episode 5. So if you signed up for the free membership and you're already in there now, you can see what I can see. So we're just going to press play. Full screen is unavailable. That's a shame. I'm just wondering if that's going to work, because you can't. I'm going to have to unplug my headphones so that you can hear.
Samadhi is an ancient Sanskrit word that means union. It is union of the individual persona, the egoic self, with something greater, something unfathomable to the mind. Samadhi is a surrendering, a humbling of individual mind to universal mind. The purpose of all meditation, yoga, prayer, and spiritual attainment is samadhi. In the language of the Christian mystics, it is humbling oneself before God. Samadhi is realized through what the Buddha called the middle way, or what in Taoism is called the balance of yin and yang. In the yogic traditions, it is called the marriage of Shiva and Shakti. When samadhi is perfect, it is wisdom of the great reality, prajna or panya, an understanding of the relationship between form and emptiness, relative and absolute. It is a coming into one's true nature. Samadhi begins with a leap into the unknown. In order to realize samadhi, one must turn consciousness away from all known objects, from all external phenomena, conditioned thoughts and sensations, towards consciousness itself, towards the inner source, the heart or essence of one's being. The source is not a thing. It is emptiness or stillness itself. It is an emptiness which is the source of all things. The great womb of creation, pregnant with all possibilities. This union cannot be understood with the limited individual mind. It is only directly realized when the mind becomes still. There is no self that awakens. There is no you that awakens. What you are awakening from is the illusion of the separate self, from the dream of a limited you. The world that you now think you are living in is actually you. It is your higher self, or the selfless self, anatta, no self. Samadhi is so simple that when you are told what it is and how to realize it, your mind will always miss it, because the mind is what needs to stop before it is realized. It is not a happening at all. It is the cessation or surrender of individual mind to higher mind or big mind. The most concise teaching of samadhi is perhaps found in this phrase: be still and know. How can we use words and images to convey stillness? How can we convey silence by making noise? Rather than talking about samadhi as an intellectual concept, this film is a radical call to inaction, a call to stillness, a call to meditation and inner silence, a call to stop. Stop everything that is driven by the pathological, egoic mind. Be still and know. No one can tell you what will emerge from the stillness. It is a call to act from the spiritual heart. Samadhi is not some mystical, altered state of being. It is simply one's natural state of presence, of consciousness unmediated by thought, unmediated by an egoic identity. Most of humanity is in an altered state all the time, a state of egoic identification with form and thought. When one is in a state of natural presence and non-resistance, prana flows more freely through the inner world. This pranic stream, which is prior to the nervous system, prior to the senses and thinking, becomes a new interface with reality, literally a new level of consciousness, or new way of being in the world. It is through the ancient teaching of Samadhi that humanity will begin to understand the common source of all religions, and to come into alignment once again with the spiral of life, Great Spirit, Dhamma, or the Tao. Samadhi is the gateless gate, the pathless path, and it is the end of identification with the self-structure which separates our inner and outer worlds.
Okay, so that's fabulous. We have some sense of samadhi, and I guess the absence of, or the opposite of, or the non-realization of samadhi is samsara. And I think what I wrote in the description for this webinar was samadhi and samsara and the notions of oneness beyond us as the center of the universe. And depending on how you punctuate that, it can mean different things. But I was talking about notions of oneness beyond, individual persons as the center of the universe, which is what a lot of spiritual practice we consume assumes that our prosperity and our experience is the center of the universe, is the thing that we are looking to control or uplift, that it's the self we are seeking to enlighten. And I think in oneness there's a very different understanding of that experience beyond the notion of a separate self. And I don't necessarily want to go into a lot of that just yet, because I have one more video. And in some ways it's a juxtaposition, but in many ways it's part of the same sentence as the Samadhi film trailer. And it's a film of a talk by Henry Rollins. And I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'll probably only play like the first 6 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. But there's something about the entanglement of our notions and desire for samadhi that can be tied in and are somehow inseparable from what Henry Rollins has to say in this video. So I might be able to screen this for you so you can see it properly.
You're yanking yourself off a mattress at some awful hour tomorrow to go into a classroom or a courtroom or a cubicle. I sympathize with you all. Thank you so much for showing up, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. Sadly, I only have an hour. If I had my way, I'd have you here tied to your seats for about 3 or 4 hours. So I must be brief. I wanted to talk to you tonight about making the world a better place, which is a huge topic, but we can shrink it down and have some fun with it. If anyone seeks to gain knowledge, they also seek to gain some kind of elevation. With college, with travel, with whatever wisdom that you can acquire from wherever and however you get it, you get a certain different point of view than someone who perhaps does not pursue. So with this elevation, you now have a choice. What you can do with what you know. With this elevation, you can hold it over people, you can use it for financial gain, or you can use it to have the world be everything that you see. Someone who doesn't look very far, their world is this big, the world is their town. I'm not putting them down. The world is their area code. The world is their family. I completely understand that, but that's limited. What if the world was your world? What if you spent enough time out in it that the world was the size of your world? Not your neighborhood, not your county, but the entire world. What if you could appreciate life from other perspectives in other parts of the world with other cultures? Don't you think that would make you a better agent for change and benevolent goodness going forward? That's kind of an oxymoron. I apologize. Some people take what they know, and I don't like the intellectual type who takes their smarts and seeks to belittle you with it. I've never been impressed. I've always been impressed by those who acquire knowledge by being on the road or reading books or whatever, and they use it to be helpful to others. And I am quite done with the idea of we, and I would really like a moment to explain that. Just don't like me for saying that and let me dig myself out. Let me burn some lean tissue. In America, I don't think we shall overcome. We've had myriad opportunities to overcome. We're not that interested. From 1865 to now, with the death of Abraham Lincoln, the 13th Amendment, the 14th from 1868, my personal favorite, we've had many, many chances to overcome. We're just not that into it. Is that because Americans are bad? No. I don't think that Homo sapiens are we types. We're not a we species. We are we every now and then at games, but we're on different sides of the field. When we vote, we're all together, but in different sides of an aisle. And then we get bored and we want to be individuals again and go home. There's marches where we, the people, we do this, but then everyone wants a bathroom break. And so Americans are put under undue pressure living under this moniker, the United States. 50 countries with 50 different cultures, with 50 different sets of values all getting together. The miracle of the United States is there hasn't been a second, third, and fourth civil war as bloody as the first one. And so for those who don't behave, I think we behave pretty well. But going forward, if you really want the world to be a better place, it is up to you, the individual, to choose to do good things. I can't make you. Only you can make you. So I am done with we, and I am just concentrating on you, what you're going to do now and what you're going to do with it in the future. We are going down the drain. We stab a knife in the side of Mother Nature and twist it every chance we get. She gives us cancer. She doesn't mean any harm. She just wants to cull the herd just a little. We fight back. She makes deserts. We go live in them. She makes floodplains. We insist in living there. Do you realize the bubonic plague, Ebola, syphilis, cancer is Mother Nature very benignly going like, cool it. I know breeding is fun, but you do it a lot. I got so much water. I got so many trees. I got so much breathable air. You're screwing up my equation with medicine, with technological breakthroughs. Thank goodness you're making the wars bigger, so it's kind of evening up just a little bit. So that's we. So I'm only interested in you. And I've come to the conclusion that people are basically ungovernable and they're untamable. And that's why any governmental delivery system, democracy, communism, socialism, whatever ism or assy you want to use, it's rife with problems. Why? The paperwork is fine. It's because there's people involved, and people aren't bad. They just have a ton of ideas all at once. So we shall not overcome. You, on the other hand, can overcome, and you can inspire someone else to overcome. And that's why you want to travel. That's why you want to be part of change and part of something positive going forward. We all can't agree on anything for very long except oversleeping and pizza. But you can do a lot. And late last year, I got an email from a woman. It's why I staggered onto the stage a few minutes ago with a steno pad in my hand. Usually, I keep all my information right here. I don't use any notes, nor do I take a drink of water, and I try not to say or and I rarely stop talking for very long. You'll see. So I got an email at the end of last year from a woman, and I'm not putting her in the pejorative, but I wrote down her email to me, and I put it on my steno pad because I wanted to quote her. In one paragraph, she summed up the state of humanity. She nailed it. And I'm not trying to make fun of her. I'm not putting her in the pejorative at all. I think she got it. And I think she thought she was already in a conversation with me, and this was a second or third email to me. It was the only one I've ever received. I'll read it to you, see what you think. But in one paragraph, she got all of us together. Hi, Henry. I forgot to mention God's spaceships and Jesus returned in thousands of them during my lifetime to beam up all those who are ready then. Yes, there is a way out of this hellhole called planet Earth, and it is not so far off anymore. Check out Psalm 68:17. He went, so he will come back again. Merry Christmas. I am on Facebook. Now, in one cranial exhalation, in one cerebral this woman was able to take in alien abduction as transport, Jesus, God, a Judeo-Christian holiday, and social networking. Like, do you want to hang out with this woman? I do. I think she'd be amazing. And that just shows you in one paragraph, one fell swoop, how dynamic humans are, where they can take in the spiritual, the cutting edge of technology, the good book, and all of that, and stir it all together and still walk a tightrope, chew gum, and not fall off. And that's why humans are largely ungovernable. And that is why it's such a pain in the neck to deal with humans, because they are, for better or for worse, individuals. And so if you really want to help, if you really want to go forward, you have to take people as a living, breathing, thinking thing that are connecting dots and agreeing with themselves on basic central truths. My father, who I haven't seen in at least 175 years, I don't know how old he is. I don't know where he is. I don't even know if he's still with us. If he's still alive, he's probably crouching low in the weeds of Virginia, clutching an AR-15, waiting for a Fox News host to issue him his next directive. And if any of you are Fox News fans, I'm not putting you down. I'm just saying that's where he goes, and he and I have a lot of disagreements on probably everything. And he was a PhD and also a champion racist and a magnificent homophobe and a record-breaking misogynist. And he never traveled. And my mother, on the other hand, to the left of my mother is Bob Dylan in a wall. And so my mother dragged me all over the world as a little kid. You older folks remember when passports were green?
I lost you. I think when I went full screen, I lost you. So you just got about 10 minutes of silence. Well, that kind of goes with your Samadhi. pursuit experience. So I might just post it on the page. I mean, I can try again. Okay, let's do it again. Okay, Henry. Not sure where we got up to. Let's just start from here.
What you can do with what you know. With this elevation, you can hold it over people. You can use it for financial gain, or you can use it to have the world be everything that you see. Someone who doesn't look very far, their world is this big. The world is their town. I'm not putting them down. The world is their area code. The world is their family. I completely understand that, but that's limited. What if the world was your world? What if you spent enough time out in it that the world was the size of your world? Not your neighborhood, not your county, but the entire world. What if you could appreciate life from other perspectives in other parts of the world with other cultures? Don't you think that would make you a better agent for change and benevolent goodness going forward? That's kind of an oxymoron. I apologize. Some people take what they know, and I don't like the intellectual type who take...
Yeah, okay. I think that it's probably better if I just post it on the site and then you can watch it yourself. I'm just going to plug back in my headphones. You get a lot less feedback and other noise. Okay, so I was going to say apologies for the 10 minutes of dropping out, but then there's something in me that says, well, how is it on purpose? How is it already perfect that we had the experience of falling out? I mean, what happens for you when you're watching something and then all of a sudden it looks like the connection is disconnected? What happens for you when you expect something to be consistent? You know, you expect one thing to happen after the other and it doesn't. Does it feel to you like a suffering? Does it feel to you pathological? Does it feel to you like something has gone awry or amiss? There's a spanner in the works. There's a gremlin. And what if you have that feeling to begin with, and then from the awareness that you're having that feeling, the question arises, how is the gremlin already on purpose? You know, because there is a similar, you know, kind of parallel conversation that people have, which is more the reaction or the catharsis explanation. This happened so that such and such could happen. You know, the pain was an opportunity to do X, Y, Z, but the pain itself is not sacred. The pain itself is not essential. The pain itself is still seen as something that needs to be ended and gotten over. It's still kind of put in that basket of a means to an end, and that pain is still seen as a negative, albeit an essential. I'm just trying to think of because the negative and positive is a big part of that conversation. Even though it's a good thing because it takes you to somewhere that you need to be that's positive, the pain itself is still understood as a negative thing that must end. So you only know that it worked. You only know that it was a means to an end if it got you to somewhere positive. You only know if it got you to somewhere positive if the pain ended, right? But what if the pain was in and of itself essential and sacred and on purpose? What would have to happen for that to be true? What would have to happen for the 10 minutes or whatever it was, 12 minutes of silence and uncertainty? Because I think that's what it is, isn't it? It's that sense of not knowing what happened if the broadcast is over, not knowing what happened if it's something on your end that you can fix in order to stop it. Like that's really the core of the conversation that makes us have an experience of suffering. Because I can be in pain, understand it as sacred, have the experience of pain, and still not label it as suffering. How is it that I can do that? And I'm not a martyr. It's not like I go through it until the universe takes it away. I'll take a damn pill if the universe says, take a pill, it's okay. It's not that I'm honoring the painfulness. I'm honoring pain. I'm honoring whatever it is. And at the moment, we've labeled this thing as pain, or we've labeled this thing as a disconnection or a silence or an uncertainty. So how can we meet that label as sacred? Because someone else can have the same experience and have a different label for it. And I think that's where that sense of cultural bias, you know, which is inseparable from perceptual bias, comes into that equation. How I'm denoting, diagnosing, deciphering this experience is not an objective process. There's a whole heap of preconceptions involved in what I'm calling pain. And in turn, why I have an experience of painful. Because I think the thing for me is, if the experience presents as pain, it's painful, stop. It's not pain because I haven't done something yet, or pain that will teach me a lesson, or pain that I will overcome if XYZ. I think it's the full stopness of my experience that allows me to see everything as sacred and still have it, still have the experience of, you know, not being able to pay my bill, or having an argument, or, you know, whatever it is that you think you'll get away from or avoid or overcome in samadhi, in the absence of suffering. And I think that's the thing. Do you believe that samadhi is the absence of suffering? Do you believe that samadhi is the ability to avoid, or the capacity to prevent? Do you think it's an immunity to suffering? Or do you understand samadhi as an acceptance and acknowledgement and awareness of all that is as sacred? Including whatever it seems to be, including whatever it has been labeled. And I think when I accidentally, it's no accident, found that Henry Rollins talk, which I'll put on the page inside the Mystery of Mastery, there's something about the way he articulates, there's an honesty in his narrative that's self-aware. There's a movableness in his self-awareness, as much as there is a nakedness in his anchor, in his sense of this is who I am, and who I am is a thing that can be known. The nakedness of his anchor is I'm not sure how to put it. It's not unapologetic. It's not humble. And all of the things in the one conversation. And he's born with it, or he's in this moment with it. It is the notion of what he is. There's no sense that I admire it because he learnt it or he overcame something or it makes him a better person. We are there's no words for it. It's not that we are the product of what we know. It is that we can only be who we are. We can only act on the information we have. We can only desire and prefer and acknowledge what it is we're capable of desiring and preferring and acknowledging. I don't think there's any means of creating a hierarchy of people, and how they've dealt with their experience, nor is there a means of creating a hierarchy of skills which generic people can go in and adopt in order to better themselves or the world. I can't see it any other way except that you are who you are for a reason, and the product, the experience of who you are, which other people perceive as a product, is a consequence. There's no word, it's not consequence. Is a consequence of who you are. You can only know what you know. If you have a preference, there's a reason that you have that preference. It's not an excuse. It's not a justification. It's the physics of reality, of personhood, of spirit. It's the physics of oneness. You can only do what you do, know what you know, be who you are. There's no way for you to stand outside of that and say, I could have done it differently. Because in that moment, you were the alchemy of all that is as an expression of spirit, and there's no you in there. That was a solid thing that has been solid throughout time that could have been different. You're just a rearrangement, an expression and experience of all that is. There's no way to maneuver that into something else from the oneness perspective. And there is from other perspectives. There's no sense that this is it. You know, there's an honoring of, if you get to this point and go, but I know Samadhi is about these practices, and these practices will take me to a place where I can see the evidence, I can see the outcomes of no more suffering. I can see the calmness and the parasympathetic nervous system responses, and I can see the immunity responses, and I can see the relationships, you know, being more healthy with a healthier communication, and I can see my sense of self-talk changing, and I can see all this evidence. So for me, Samadhi is about the practices, and the practices are about ending the suffering or diminishing the suffering. And then I believe that Samadhi is infectious and it will ripple out into the world. If that is what you believe, and you get to this point in the conversation and you argue that that is what you believe, then that's what you believe. There's no sense in oneness that that's wrong or right, that it needs to change. It is what it is. If you have an awareness of what is true for you, then you have an awareness of what is true for you. There's nothing else going on according to the oneness perspective. There's nothing being taught or learnt or passed on or mastered. You know, even the mystery of mastery is about the fact that we can only be present to the unknown by not knowing. The mystery is the point. Okay, I'm going to put that video on the Mystery of Mastery site so you can watch it for yourself. Oh, I do love Henry Rollins. You know, I think that's the way he's able to articulate his experience as a youth, as a 20-something, as a 30-something, and now in his 50s. It's not about his age, it's about the fact that he can talk about himself in a way that makes sense to me. And one of the mysteries of who I am, of who I'm meant to be, was as a teenager not knowing how to articulate, not having a language, and still not having a language for many of the experiences, for many of the things that I am. And that's on purpose. There's no sense that that will change or end, or that's my job and I'll get to it and fix it. And, you know, there's just something appealing to me about people who are able to articulate. Because I don't, and I'm not. It's the perfection of who I am includes the fact that I did not and could not as a teenager, and still articulation is something beyond me. And yet, if it is beyond me, then what is it that I am doing? That's the question that comes in. It's not when will I be able to, or how can I learn to articulate? The question is, all right, so if you can't articulate, then what are you doing? What can you do? Because obviously what you are doing or what you can do is already on purpose. And I feel like a broken record because that's the thing that I keep coming back to. And yet that's the thing, that's the message that I'm being asked to say over and over again in every situation. If you can identify the thing that you want or that you can't do, that's fine. So what is it that you are and you can do? What is it that is happening? That's where I'm asked to focus. So where are you asked to focus? What is the universe or your logic or your sense of purpose or duty in the world, to the world, ask you to focus? Okay, we're stopping now. I'll talk to you next week. Lots of love.